And welcome to another episode of the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast for September 1st, 2021. I'm Taylor Phillips along with Ed Smith. My opening statement, I'm not even sure if the Tigers can even contend next year or the year after that, but at least the Spartans have a new athletic director, inevitably. Ed, what's your opening statement?
My opening statement is football related and concerns both of our local teams here in the state of Michigan. For the Lions, it's about keeping expectations tempered. And for the Wolverines, it's about steadying expectations, but still, they're very high expectations at that. You expect more, now we got to see more, or else changes may need to be made.
Yep. And before we get started, our show is sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app where great fans cover. Download it from the Apple App Store or Google Play and sign up by typing in the referral code STABLES. Also, a shout out to Cali Tickets for sponsoring the Detroit Sports Rag, founded by Jeff Moss. You can follow him on Twitter at HowAboutIt91. Visit CaliTickets.com to purchase tickets to an event of your choice. Now, let's go ahead and preview some football, starting with those Michigan Wolverines. Cade McNamara will start at quarterback. So, Ed, you got the preview, so take it right away.
Yeah, in terms of what the Michigan Wolverines, they decided, they looked upon, they studied what worked best, what didn't work best, and they've come to a decision after looking at all the other prospects and recruits and knowing what was on their roster and who they got, what they decided upon. They're going to go with a young hand. He is a redshirt sophomore, I believe, but Jim Harbaugh believes he is what's best in terms of what the team needs right here and now. After the disaster that was last season, I thought there was some spots that Cade McNamara had to where he did and could show out very well. Now he's going to have an even higher expectation. Excuse me, not redshirt sophomore, but a junior. I got to correct myself on that. But still, I think that might played a factor into him being the name because of his seniority of a sense. He's one of probably the highest. Yeah, in terms of upperclassmen or whatever, he's the highest one ranked there. JJ McCarthy, even though I think there's some expectations about him, but I still think he's still a little bit, green around the edges. So I would say, yeah, keep an eye out on him. But for now, depth chart purposes. But this is Cade McNamara's time. And now he's get a chance to prove himself. I thought he did well enough last year, considering everything that went down between Joe Milton not panning out and other factors, and how the Michigan quarterback scene has looked now under the tenureship of Jim Harbaugh, whether it be Jake Rudolph or Wilton Spade, Chase Patterson, all that sort of thing. So in terms of figuring out what you need for your offense to move and maneuver, there may be some things in Cunningham, not Cunningham, but McNamara, that they might feel intrigued to know that, hey, he's at best in running our offense, what he can do for our system. It also helps, though, too, if you have support that is adequate, because they haven't had that quite a while. When you have talent like Donovan Peoples-Jones and Nico Collins, rather, thinking about the Tigers, move on and transition to the NFL. So you have to replace that, but also, upgrade at the running back spot. And with a running core by committee coming in, headlined by the likes of Sean Haskins, for example, it's interesting to look at for sure. We know that the defense has some question marks of their own, but we want to see how can the offense do. Because there were some high spots last year. We saw how they were able to at least put on some points, but they were still able to frustrate and stagnate in other places. So we need to see more leveled consistency. That should be the main clear goal if you're Michigan. Obviously from both sides. Yeah, obviously from both sides of the ball. So it helps to know that he's got a good
Yeah, we apologize for those technical difficulties audio-wise, but
that was a weird sound. That was a weird sound, but yeah. Long story short, it helps that he doesn't have a stiff test this weekend that he does face off against Western Michigan.
Yep. And Western Michigan will be week 1 for Michigan, and I think Western Michigan should be almost an easy opponent, if not completely easy yet.
It's a setup opponent. Your real test really is going to be next week against Washington. That's going to be the primetime game. That will be the home game here, and it'll be nationally televised and all that. So that's going to be the true spotlight test for sure for McNamara. But this is a chance for him to get his legs underneath him and get himself ready and settled and prepared as possible. You will think of this as a prep opponent, scrimmage opponent, but you don't want to overlook them. But come on, it's Western. No offense to any of my any of our Bronco fans out there, but come on, you gotta be realistic here.
Yeah, definitely got to be realistic. It's in fact the Mid-American Conference, what I like to call the mediocre American Conference, because it's not elite. It's not even nearly elite.
It's meh. Hence the letter M.
Yep.
It's meh. The meh athletic conference.
Yeah, the Meh American Conference. In fact, speaking of which, the Central Michigan Chippewas, my Central Michigan Chippewas football head coach, Jim McElwain, diagnosed with appendicitis and having surgery earlier. Still, prayers and condolences, or just prayers to Jim McElwain. So, yeah, not sure who's going to take over or be the acting head coach for Jim McElwain if it were to start soon. So that's out of the way. Now, the Michigan State Spartans, to preview their first game is at Northwestern. So the Spartans are kicking off Big Ten action in week 1.
Or rather, it's the odd scheduled choice. I gotta see. I can't remember what led up or set that up. I don't know if there was something that was COVID related or whatever the case may be. But yeah, these two conference teams are going to be kicking off the season against each other. This is something that you would normally see in the NFL schedule. Like imagine the Lions facing off against the Bears in week 1. This will be that similar type of feel or atmosphere. But they won't go back, to conference play until after they face Miami. So this will be their first taste, of conference play for a few weeks. But still, it is an interest to see what is the progress going on now as we begin year 2 of the Mel Tucker era. I think they overperformed a lot of people's expectations last year. They knew last year was going to be difficult in a lot of instances. But in terms of how they performed last season, primarily since what they did beat Michigan in Mel Tucker's first go-around, so he can always have that to hang over his head. So building upon that momentum of sorts and trying to carry that on into this year, I would tell people to not get too excited because there's a chance they could underperform your expectations. If that's the case, you should still expect an improvement from the previous season, but this should be still considered a rebuild phase, if you want to call it that. It's a long ways away, from what you were at your zenith, at your peak, at the heights of Mark D'Antonio. Those are a long ways away. So now you're focusing on trying to build towards for the future. You did that a pretty decent job at last year. Now you got to continue on to it this year. But I will say, between this and Miami, that's 2 pretty difficult bumps for the first 3 games of the season. Granted, you do get a gimme of sorts when you face Nebraska and Western Kentucky, but it don't get much easier considering that you got Indiana and Michigan later on, who's going to be hungry for revenge themselves. You got to see them back-to-back weeks in October, or back-to-back games, I should say, since they do at least have a bye week before Michigan. But I digress. It's all about the focus of what they can do here now. Can their offense be a more well-oiled machine? What can they do in terms of taking advantage of prime defensive opportunities? Just building more upon what they did last year and seeing, hey, we know what. They're not a contending team of sorts, but they can get one step closer. But how can they do that in terms of how they perform this season? So that's what I'm looking at. A comparison away towards the Lions, but much more higher standard. This is a team that's hoping to be at best mediocre, if not above average, compared to what we've usually been seeing from the Lions of sorts.
Yeah. And speaking of the Lions, we're going to recap their preseason loss 27-17, not 21, 27-17 to the Indianapolis Colts in preseason week 3. Now, Tim Boyle did a little bit better than David Blau, obviously. David Blau kind of had a bit of a rough go, and then before that, Tim Boyle had a decent outing, even threw a touchdown pass.
Yeah, he did a little bit good this week, but I think Boyle had a strong enough week, second week, to I would still have him in the league, but barely in terms of who you want as on the number 2 spot for the QB depth chart. I would go Blau, just the fact he has had that in-game experience, considering the fact that he stepped in when he had to when Stafford was hurt. So that's always a good check in his factor in his corner. But other than that, this was a game where essentially most, if not all, the resters were started. I get it. You don't want to take that risk in the last game of the preseason where it's meaningless anyway. Who gives a crap if you won any of your games or lost all of them, as the Lions eventually did? But still, it's all about seeing how does your team progress in the system, especially with this new system under Dan Campbell and his coaches. How can they cooperate? How can they gel together? Get used and adjusted to certain plays, rhythms, techniques, routines, all that sort of thing before you kick off the season where everything counts for real. It's also figuring out your depth chart, figuring out who fits best on your team with certain roster spots, key areas, whether it be on special teams or God knows, well needed at the wide receiver spot. And you're even seeing right now, this past week, what they've done in terms of roster cuts. They're still figuring out and tinkering things. Nobody said this was a complete job, even after I thought they had a solid draft. Nobody was saying that. They know there's still a long road yet ahead of them in terms of establishing what they want to have for themselves. But when you still factor that in, they had at least a very good going with here in this in this game, at least until obviously the lead went away. But again, that was with mostly second and third string dudes. So not much to see into the result other than thank God, no one got relatively too hurt or dinged up. And now you got the boring preseason out the way, and now you're on to the regular season.
Yep, now the regular season, indeed. So speaking of the roster cuts, they included linebacker Jelani Tavai, of all people, wide receiver Geronimo Allison, and both kickers Randy Bullock and Zane Gonzalez. Now, we're going to get to the new kicker that they signed afterwards, but Jelani Tavai, of all people, didn't make the cut. 53-man roster.
You know what? And this was the HBO show, Hard Knocks. This will be a big, one of the most featured spots on one of the last episodes of the year before the season starts, because, wow, this is like that unexpected cut you didn't see coming before the end of the show. So to see that happen is, in a way, a bit of a surprise, but also you're not, because when you consider of how they're trying to do so much turnover from the previous era, from the Quinn Trisha era to now, it doesn't surprise me that they're trimming the fat, so to speak, on certain, spots and key areas. So knowing that Tavai had severely underperformed, and by the way, the fact that the only team that wanted to get him was the Patriots, who conveniently Patricia went back to this past offseason, lets me know that, this was a match not made to last or in any sense. So I'm glad they finally got rid of him. If I were to give this a grade, I would give this an A-, because they should have done it sooner.
Yep, true. And speaking of what's your grade, we're going to get to that right now. The Lions claimed kicker Austin Siebert off waivers from the Cincinnati Bengals. And he's not the only one. We'll get to the other one next. But what is your grade on Austin Siebert, Ed?
I give it a C+, because you just need a kicker. You just need someone, because you saw how he looked decent enough in terms of what he did with Cincinnati beforehand, preseason. He's doing way better than what your other kickers have done so far. And you need something. You need a relative good kicker. Otherwise, you're going to be seeing I'm pretty sure Dan Campbell maybe wasn't half joking when he said we're probably going to go for two a lot. And frankly, it would surprise me because if you're not having a reliable kicking game, how do you think you're going to do? Especially remember, this is not the point where they can put the ball to the 2 yard line for PAT kicks anymore. They're stretching it out. They got it at the 15-yard line now. So if you can't have hit those kind of kicks, how the hell are you expected to hit another, kicks from 30, 40, 50 yards out? So they had to make a move. They had to do something. They like what they saw from this guy so far, from Siebert so far. And frankly, in terms of if they go for two a lot or try to do a lot of 2-point conversions, it reminds me of this old, I guess if you want to call it gag, if you will, once I used to see when Keith Olbermann had his show, his own brief show on ESPN2, something about how the NFL had to borrow an old or was borrowing rules from this old football league, and one of it concerned about how if you went for two or went instead of kicking the ball, you try to run a play for an extra point or two conversion. They call it the action point. So I'm thinking to myself, wow, wouldn't this be funny if this was the first team, or one of, if not the only team ever, to go for it all out every single play, every single time, every single game? They will be known as the action point team. So it'll be a little bit humorous to see that, but I doubt it that's going to happen. So, you need to get a kicker. In a way, I kind of wish Jason Hansen hadn't retired, but, things are what they have to be. Matt Prater apparently wasn't worth it anymore, so now they got to move in a new direction. And so far, we've seen how difficult it is to replace that.
Yeah, and Matt Prater was already aging before he left Detroit for Denver to play for the Broncos before his retirement.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of which, the Lions also claimed wide receiver Kadiril Hodge off waivers from the Cleveland Browns. So, Ed, what's your grade on Hodge?
I'll give this one another C plus. Again, it's trying to figure out what can you do with your wide receiver core, because it's severely lacking. It was severely lacking the moment Kenny Galladay left for the Giants. I like what I want to see out of Amon-Ra St. Brown, but I think that's still has to grow and develop for him before he becomes that true number one target. So they're just trying something out. Remember, they also traded for Trinity Benson as well. Their wide receiving depth is going to be very porous, I would say, in terms of overall production and performance. So for that, in terms of what my expectations are, I give this a C plus. And let's be honest, if you want to tie it into another point that I meant to talk about earlier, this is a young team. And in Dan Campbell's own words, this is a green team. I like that term. It reminds me of something when you see being talked about on professional wrestling shows about professional wrestling, where this new young competitor is like, oh, they're a little bit green in the ring here. I think that's what the same terminology you can use in regards to most of the players on this team. It's going to take time to get adjusted to that, to make that maturity, to make that development. Dan Campbell believes he has the right system and the right coaches in place to where he can do that. But that's yet to be seen. There's still holes to figure out, still voids to fill. But knowing all of that and knowing the kind of potential that is available in some of these players, these new recent additions, whether it be draft picks or whatever, you want to set a benchmark at least for how this season can go. And to me, that benchmark would be 3, maybe 4 wins. If they can get to, let's say, 4, if not 5 wins at the very least, I would consider that a job well accomplished, considering the whole circumstances of what they did in terms of firing Matt Campbell and Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia. Yeah, firing Bob Quinn and Matt Patricia, bringing in Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, and trading Matthew Stafford, then leading to the draft that they had. It's been a wild off season, you got to admit. So now the fact that we can finally just get back to football now, I'm ready to see it. But I have a benchmark, and I think for me that benchmark is going to be probably 3 wins. If they can get past that, get the 4, maybe 5, I could say job well done on year 1 of the Campbell era.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you there, because it's a young team. Jared Goff at quarterback is going to have to work with those young guns and things like that. We'll have to see what happens. So we already mentioned Central Michigan Chippewas football head coach Jim McElwain being diagnosed with appendicitis and having surgery earlier. And that's all football. Now,
Well, if you don't mind, since we still got enough time to kill at least a little bit, if I can talk about and break down or preview how the Lions and 49ers can go.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, go
I
ahead.
will say there are a couple key things to me to look at, or at least a couple matchups in terms of styles or position battles, or whatever the case, however you want to look at it. Who's going to be the better performing tight end? More than likely, people are going to say it's going to be George Kittle, but I want to see how does TJ Hawkinson do for himself in terms of working himself into the system of being a run blocker for sure to help establish the run for guys like DeAndre Swift and Williams and whatnot. But also, can he be that reliable weapon for Jared Goff? We saw how good he was able to do when he had Stafford throwing it to him, but now how is he going to do with Goff? So I'm really quite intrigued to see how they do that. I believe Trey Lance, if I'm not mistaken, is injured. I could be wrong last I checked, but I do believe he's a little bit hurt. I don't know what his status is at the moment for week 1, but that is something to look out. I don't know if we're going to be facing him or Jimmy G. That still yet remains to be seen. So a little bit of a wild card element there in terms of what the defense will be facing. So between that, Kittle versus Hawk, and also the effect of Michael Brockers, this is his potential debut if he's physically fit and able. This is going to be his debut with the team, and he's going to be facing an old rival. Remember, he's coming from the Rams, coming from LA, so he knows of how that rivalry goes, that NFC West blood goes between how it went between the Rams and the Niners. So for him, this is like a welcome home gift, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, Lions and 49ers. Yeah, I'm hearing myself echo for some reason. We apologize for technical difficulties, but anyway, so let's give a Viget predicted score. Ed, we'll start with you.
I'll go San Francisco. My Viget predicted score will be San Francisco 27, Detroit 17. This is still a young team. They still got some things to figure out. I know the fans are going to be crowded. They're going to be packed. They're going to be excited. And maybe some of that energy will help early on. But frankly, I see San Francisco as the better football team. And no matter what time zone difference, traveling from coast to coast, that sort of thing, they're the better team. And they should show it. And they should act like it and play like it. So I'm picking San Fran to win. My big predicted score is 27-17.
All righty then. I'm going to go 49ers winning 30-20. So, yeah, we almost forgot to preview this. So,
and because as an outlier at this point is such a given at this point, there's really no need for,
Right. Yeah, because we got
just really
not much.
Yeah.
Right. Not much time between now and a week from Sunday. That is September 12th. And we're going to recap that. And that is our next episode, by the way, just to let everyone know ahead of time. Now the Tigers. Manager AJ Hinch saying, if you don't want to come, we'll beat you. Yeah. If you don't want to come, we'll beat you, to tease a postseason push for 2022. Now, if the Tigers want to make a postseason push for next year, their general manager Al Avila is going to have a lot of work cut out for him, a lot of work on his hands to make this team a contender again. Got a whole lot of holes to fill, and including the infield, even the outfield too, but especially starting pitching and even the bullpen as well. But the starting pitching has still been a mess, even with Casey Mize, who's still trying to adjust. Tarek Skubal racking up the strikeouts, but still giving up so many runs. He gave up 6 last night to the Oakland Athletics, who really have a much dangerous offense. They'll take elite pitching to shut them down, just like Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer once did in the 2012 and 2013 ALCSs.
In a way, it can remind me of a young Verlander, of how Mize, he has it going, he's got a groove going, but once he runs into that one little tough inning, things snowball for him, and it took JB years to get out of that type of inconsistent start before he developed into the MVP, Cy Young caliber pitcher that he was expected to be. So we're just seeing that phase now for Mize. He'll be able to find a way to get a handle on it and develop out of that rut in due time. I do believe that. It is disappointing, in a sense, to where when you have the momentum of what you've done so far in the second half of the season, if you've won 4 of your past 6, so to speak, and now you just followed it up with 4 stinkers in a row. Yeah, Cabrera got the 500 home run. He's closing in on 3,000 hits, but as much and well respected and well deserved those accolades are, this is still about the team first and foremost, and they haven't gotten anything done, to speak of or worth noting. They are making improvements from last year. Thank goodness. They're on pace to have more wins than they had than last year, sure. But they're in danger currently at the moment of falling back into that rut to where, if things are not careful, they could potentially finish in last place again. And I don't want to see that happen again, considering what they've been as a team since the start of May, if you want to take that into consideration. But knowing that, and knowing that we've heard now public comments for both, or now just him and Alavila, and now even Cheapskate Chris, about wanting to spend, wanting to go after, try to make a move or so in the off season.
Chris Illich, for those who don't know.
Exactly. So when you consider that into consideration, take that into consideration, I should say, it becomes a case of put up or shut up, I would say. You're talking about it, but let's see you go out and prove it. Let's see what you do this winter. Who can you convince to come join you? Who can you persuade? Who are you going to go after? What are you going to do with all your money and space in terms of fit, need, role on the team? All of that is needs to be thought of before you dive headfirst into this. Oh, I see popping up every time I see this in regards to free agency. It's Carlos Correa and Justin Verlander.
I couldn't get that last part. It was cut off. What did you see?
Carlos. The two names I constantly see it popping up in terms of fans.
Carlos Correa, that's right. Yeah. And Justin
Carlos
Verlander,
Correa.
And even Max
Carlos
Scherzer.
Correa. Scherzer, I doubt, because he still wants to compete for championships. He's not going to do that coming back to Detroit. Verlander.
Yeah, his name was Scherzer's name was mentioned in that score article that I sent to you guys off air.
Yeah, I doubt he's going to go from a contending team in the Dodgers, no matter how this season ends, to want to go back to go to a team that's in the middle of a rebuild project or is in the next phase of their rebuild process. I doubt he wants to downgrade. If I'm Scherzer, Verlander may be of a different sort. You don't know with him. He may be different feeling on this than Scherzer, saying, "Hey, you know what? I got my ring. My career's winding down. I'm getting older. I know I'm not going to be here forever. I'm coming off Tommy John. I'm going to be unrestricted free agent. I still have love for Detroit and the fans and everything. And oh, by the way, the guy that got me to my World Series, he's here too. And I'm tight with the Illiches. So, depending on what we can talk about in terms of money, whatever the case, then yeah, I think it's more realistic, believe it or not, that I could see Verlander being signed in 2022 than Correa, even though Correa does fill out a big need, gives you, in terms of the shortstop position, gives you an excellent spot, or at least more added boost in the lineup to go with the guys that you got now. You got to figure out what the parameters are, how much is he going to want or demand, and how many years is he willing to be here to do it. So that's all into consideration. Remember, it only took a combination of Victor Martinez's knee going out and Mike Ilitch offering over $200 million just to get Prince Fielder to sign here. So I don't know what it's going to take or what may be required to possibly bring in one.
Victor Martinez company.
Yeah, to possibly bring in one, if not both of these guys. But, we'll see how they do.
Yep. We'll see how they do in 2022 and 2023. So that's everything we've covered. Now the What We've Learned segment. Ed, I'll let you get your 2 cents in on what you've learned, depending what we discussed tonight. So
In
Ed,
terms of
take the floor.
based on what we discussed tonight, I have learned that it's good to know and good to see that football season's finally back. You got the Wolverines here. You got the Spartans this week. You got the Lions next week. You want to see how things start for Dan Campbell, how things continue for Mel Tucker, and potentially you may see some things come to an end in terms of for Jim Harbaugh at Michigan if things don't pan out a certain way. That's just me saying it. That's just my thought on the matter, because frankly, it's 7 years now, and as much as I have been an ardent and fervent supporter of Jim Harbaugh, giving him chance after chance, I got to recognize facts. I got to recognize reality here. I would have expected at least a Big Ten title by now. I would have at least expected a appearance in the conference, in the college football playoff. Maybe not a national title game, that title championship, but at least a game appearance, something to that effect. But none of those have been accomplished. So in terms of what I've talked about, again, see how things start for the Lions, see how things continue for MSU. We got to start seeing some production or seeing some results that are necessary, or else things could potentially be ending at Michigan.
All right. What I've learned, and this is real truth, and it's only on the Tigers this time. The Tigers have so much ineptitude to clean up and so many holes to fill on the roster that they may not even be prepared to contend in 2022 or even 2023. Even Verlander, Correa, and even Scherzer may not be enough. They got to address the defense and the bullpen as well. And their offense needs to get going as well to support their pitchers run support-wise. All that stuff. Alavila has got a ton of work on his hands. He's going to have a ton of work on his hands. It may take a year or two, maybe 3. But soon, I doubt it. That's what we've learned. And before we go, this show is sponsored by the Viget Sports mobile app, where great fans cover. Download it from the Apple App Store or Google Play and sign up by typing in the referral code STABLES with a capital S and the rest of the letters being lowercase, including the letter B in the middle, as in billionaire. Also, a shout out to Cali Tickets for sponsoring the Detroit Sports Rag, founded by Jeff Moss. Again, follow him on Twitter at HowAboutIt91. Visit CaliTickets.com to purchase tickets to an event of your choice. Ed, excellent job as always. He, I, and Frank will all be back a week from Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern on September 12th after the Lions duel with the San Francisco 49ers at Ford Field. We're going to recap this whole thing and talk about other stuff. Until then, Brett Smith on behalf of Frank Vasher, this is Taylor Phillips signing off. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DT2Phillips, and follow Ed Smith on Twitter and Instagram at EdSmith313, and follow our show on Twitter, Periscope, and Instagram at Michigan_Truth, and like it on Facebook as the Michigan Sports Truth Podcast. Thanks very much for listening, downloading, watching, and sharing, and remember, the truth is out there. TTFN, ta-ta for now. Power to the people, hit them with a hind, we rest our case, stay out of trouble.